Welcome to the Writer's Journey podcast. I'm Michael Laran, a science fiction and fantasy author on a journey to go from nobody to bestseller, and I'm documenting every step of the way. Tune in every week as I pull back the curtain on my writing life and how I'm building a writing career while working a full-time job, raising a family, and attending law school classes in the evenings. You can find show notes for this week's episode, a free starter library of my fiction, and much more at michaellaran.com. Hello and welcome to episode 145. 145 is a good number, and I've titled the name of this week's episode, The Most Insane Challenge I've Done Yet, Amnesia Mode Diaries, Week 7. We're going to talk about how I'm going to be wrapping up Amnesia Mode here very soon, but then we're going to talk about what's next. So real quick, I actually have no announcements this week, so that's kind of a first. So thank you to everybody who picked up your copy of Indie Author Confidential Volumes 1 through 3. If you didn't know that I have a new book out, you can certainly grab that at authorlevelup.com/confidential. But otherwise, things are pretty good this week. Now, wins for the week. It's a pretty big win. You know, I had my back pain last week, and I said, I'm going to try something a little bit different. It's a little painful to sit down in front of the computer and type, so I started dictating again. So I did something a little bit different. I'll talk more about that later. But I started dictating again, and my first few sessions went very smoothly. So I've still got it. It's been about 4 or 5 years since I've dictated my last book, and so it was nice to re-engage that muscle memory. So I consider that a win for the week. Now, lesson learned this week. I wanted to pass some knowledge along to all of you because this is a service that I want more people to know about. And that is a service called Book Sirens. And what Book Sirens does is it makes it easier for you to secure reviews. Now, I don't know any author on the planet that doesn't have this problem. And it's the following problem. You publish your book and you need reviews in order to get promotions. And you need promotions in order to get reviews. And so it's like this chicken and egg problem. And so how do you go off and get reviews in a way that's, one, copacetic with the Amazon and different book retailers' review policy, and two, that is ethical, right? And historically, the challenge has been with reviews, you have to reach out to a bunch of random strangers that you don't know in hopes that they'll take a chance on your book. And, they'll leave you an honest review. Maybe they'll like it, maybe they won't. But the biggest problem is that you'll get a lot of people that won't read the book. That's the number one problem. And so what Book Sirens does is they have it's like a dual sign up. So there's Book Sirens for readers, and then there's Book Sirens for writers. And so as a reader, you sign up for the service, and then you agree to get emails, kind of like BookBub, where authors basically will list their books on the site, and then you'll see the book cover of the book as well as some description of it. And then you can decide at that point as a reader whether you want to download the book or not. And if you download it, the author then pays a certain amount per reader, depending on the plan that the author buys. And then if the person leaves a review, cool. If they don't, not the end of the world. But Book Sirens will ask for some feedback from the reader about why they didn't leave a review, which I think is great. And the cool thing about this is that it kind of gets around the historical problems that review services have had with Amazon. So I can remember a day. This was back in 2014. There was a service, I'm not going to name it, but there was a service out there that promised that, we'll help you get up to 20 to 50, maybe 100 reviews, depending on, how much you pay. And you would pay the fee, and you would get some reviews. Actually, the service did what they promised that they would do. But it turned out that it was against the Amazon terms of service. And so many of those reviews that got that you got through that service, even while they were technically legitimate and they were technically ethical, they got removed from Amazon because it was a violation of Amazon's policies. I can remember another service not that long ago, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, that what it did was Amazon used to allow reviewers to put their email address on their profile, and I think they still do. But what you used to be able to do is you used to be able to scrape those email addresses, so you could look at the different reviews where a reader left a review, and then you would get the name of the book, and then you would get their email address as long as it was publicly available on the Amazon site. And there were multiple services that would run a scraping bot across Amazon. You just paid them a certain fee. You gave them like a certain number of books that were similar to yours, and they would go off and they would scrape as many publicly listed reviewer emails as possible. They'd give you that email list, and then you could go off and email them and pitch them. And it was a numbers game, but it wasn't a bad way to get reviews. Well, Amazon disabled that, so you can't do that anymore. So what I like about Book Sirens is that, one, you don't have to rely on Amazon or Kobo or Barnes & Noble in order to get the reviewers. It's all based on their community. And I just love that. That's great. And so they're growing like gangbusters. I want more people to know about them. I do have an affiliate link. It's called authorlevelup.com/Book Sirens. I do receive a small commission if you sign up, but I don't know anybody who doesn't have this problem of finding book reviews. And I was pleasantly surprised when I checked them out. And I was even more pleasantly surprised when I went to the Alliance of Independent Authors website, nonprofit organization for writers, which I belong to, and they listed them as recommended. Al, I had nothing but good things to say about Book Sirens, and so, hey, I said, I got to let people know about this. So check it out at authorlevelup.com/Book Sirens if you dare. Now, idea of the week, and this is an idea I had. This was back in 2015. And I don't remember how it came up. I think I was talking to somebody about how I was doing this, but I wanted to share it because it's an idea I've thought about doing again in the far future, and that's the power of writing a pilot series. So in 2015, I had finished. I just finished. I think it was like my 6th or 7th book, and I didn't know what to write next. And so at that point, I had maybe, I don't remember what the official number was, but it was a very small number of people on my mailing list. It was maybe 12 people at most. It was maybe 20. I don't even think it was that much. And I didn't know what I was going to write next. I had 4 really good ideas, and they were all from 4 completely different genres. And I wanted to know which one my audience would be mostly interested in. And so I sent them an email and I said, I've got these ideas. Which ones would you be interested in? And I think one of them was a post-apocalyptic story without zombies. Another one was, I think it was an urban fantasy with an angel. And then the third was a spy thriller. And then the fourth was like a time travel adventure. And I gave a brief description of each one. And I just said, hey, vote on which one you would want to see the most. And I let people vote. And so the spy thriller and the I think it was the urban fantasy were the top 2. People didn't want to see post-apocalyptic. This was right around the time where there was a bunch of post-apocalyptic novels with zombies and stuff. And I think they were just tired of post-apocalyptic stories. So then I had 2 stories that were pretty viable. So what I did was I wrote a pilot chapter for each story. So I just pretended that I was going to write the first chapter. What would it look like? And then I posted both of those chapters on my website, and I sent my audience to both of those. And then I said, hey, vote on which one you like the most. And the one that won was the spy thriller, which at the time it wasn't. That book eventually became Android Paradox, which was a pretty successful fiction endeavor for me. But it didn't start off with androids. And so that was a really cool way to pull my audience. And it was a way to take a little bit less risk, I should say, although there were still people that liked the urban fantasy with angel story and they wanted to read that. But that was the first time in my career where I started to see some sales. It wasn't anything meaningful. It really wasn't even lunch money, but it was a really cool idea. And so, keep that in the back of your head in terms of a toolbox. If you have a couple of different stories that you want to write or a couple of different ideas, why not let your audience vote on it and let them dictate or let them give some feedback into what it is that you want to write. So that's my idea for the week. Now, topic of the week. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how my Amnesia Mode is going, how I plan to wrap it up, and then the next challenge. So Amnesia Mode is going pretty well so far. I mentioned last week that I was getting a little bored with it. I think I've learned everything I need to learn. So I'm ready to move on to the next thing. So as I mentioned last week, I learned, I was able to level up my copywriting. So I felt pretty good about that. I was able to work in ad work in Amazon ad, Amazon ad work, I should say. I was able to work those into my regular workflow. So getting in the habit of checking those every day, figuring out what that workflow looks like, doing ad research and all that. So I feel really good about that. And then I was able to run ads to books that I had not run ads to before and got a decent amount of them profitable. And so that's really what I was looking for, just kind of a way to improve my income just a little bit as we move into 2021. And so I'm feeling really good about it. So next week, I think I've officially decided, next week will be the final week in Amnesia Mode. So next week, plan on me giving a summary of kind of how things went, what some of my biggest successes were in terms of marketing, what my biggest failures were, what my biggest learnings were. And so I look forward to updating you on that next week. Now, as I was trying to figure out what to do next, I was starting to get the hankering to write fiction again. And I've been reading a lot of novels lately, and so it's just really, it's really time to start digging into novels. And you guys know that when I jump into something, I jump into it and I go big. And so I thought, okay, how can I get some novels written and do something maybe a little bit different? So I've been looking at this exercise bike in my basement for, I don't know, quite a while. I've been pretty good about exercising, maybe 3 or 4 days a week, sometimes 5. I get maybe, an hour or 2 of exercise every week. It's not much, but it's something, right? And so, you take what you can get. And I was like, oh, I need to write some fiction. And then right around this time is when my back started hurting. So like last week, my back was in a lot of pain. And so it was kind of painful to sit down at the computer. And so I was just thinking, there's a lot of interesting things converging here. What if I could write novels while I was on my bike, like exercising? Wouldn't that give me like a great incentive to get on the bike? And then I thought, well, what if, I've dictated novels in the past. What if I dictated an entire urban fantasy series while I was on my bike? And I could set some rules so I can make it kind of like a game. So I have to exercise for an hour every day. I have to be on the bike for an hour every day, just a leisurely pace, nothing crazy. And when I'm on the bike, I'm going to dictate the story. So, dictate the story. That being on the bike for an hour, that becomes additional writing time for the day. So I was like, okay, that's kind of fun. That's kind of interesting. And then I thought, what if I could only write the novel when I was on the bike? So meaning I could only write it when I was on the bike, no sitting down at the computer and writing, although I may break that rule. But I was like, okay, what if I wrote the majority of it on the bike? And then I wrote it like dictating. And then what if I only wrote into the dark, meaning no outline, I just know what the first scene is, and then I'm going to go. And then what if I only wrote the book in one draft? What would that look like? So essentially, I'm going to be writing an entire series without using my hands while moving, so essentially multitasking, and then in a way that is quite difficult to do even with your hands. I mean, I know people who struggle to write into the dark, and they have full control of the keyboard. Imagine doing that, dictating. It's nothing to shake a stick at. It's a little complicated. Now, I have done this in the past. When I wrote my last Dragonlord series, that most of that series was dictated. So it's not the first time I'm doing it, but it is the first time I'm adding something new into the mix, which is this exercise bike. And yeah, we're going to see how this goes. So yeah, I've officially decided to do it. I think it's a kind of a crazy challenge. A lot of people were really interested in this. So here's how it's going to work. I'm going to continue blogging and continue sharing my journey and everything I'm doing. But it's kind of interesting to like see what does a novel represent in terms of like, okay, a novel is 50,000 words, but what does a novel represent in terms of pounds? And then what does it represent in terms of calories? Like that would be interesting. Or like miles. Like a novel is worth 50,000 miles. I don't know if it's worth that many. I'll be on the bike forever if I do that. But it'd be interesting to see what that would look like. All right. So I'm going to share all of that. But in the meantime, right now, my biggest challenge is that I have a story to research. I have to figure out what I'm going to write. So it is going to be urban fantasy. It is going to be under the M.L. McKnight pen name. So whatever I do end up writing is going to sit right next to The Good Necromancer, which I'm still going to be writing. I haven't forgotten about that. But I got to figure that out. And so I've had this idea in the back of my head for about the last couple months, ever since the pandemic started, about a type of supernatural character that I want to write about. The type of supernatural character is a very popular type of supernatural character. Like if I said the name of this type of character, you'd be like, okay, that makes perfect sense. Totally urban fantasy. But there is a twist in that the character is a different type of this type of character. I know I'm being a little cryptic. I'm not at liberty to share too much yet because I still, a lot of these ideas are still forming. But then I was like, okay, so it's probably going to be pretty close to market. There may be some things that, that maybe push it off market a little bit. But in terms of the positioning, I can actually see it pretty clear of what it would look like. And, maybe it will do well, maybe it won't do well. I still have some research to do in terms of where it would fit and, what should be on the cover, what the book description should be. I think I'm going to try something a little different this time in that I'm going to try to do all of that first, or at least try to get that settled first and see how that goes. Because I did that the other way around with The Good Necromancer. I came up with the cover last. And so we'll see how this goes, So anyway, that is going to be my next challenge. I think I'm going to call it the writing while moving challenge. So I did the math. I hopped on the bike and I did a few test sessions, and I just dictated some nonfiction that I was working on. I dictated the next couple chapters of Indie Author Confidential Volume 4 because I write some of those chapters every week. And so I was dictating, and I wrote 1,500 words in 30 minutes one day, which shakes out to about 50 words per minute. So 50 words per minute, which is not, that's fairly slow. Like as a typer, I think I type way more than that. I don't know what my actual speed is, but it's not 50. It's a lot higher than that. So right now I'm dictating a little bit slower than I'm typing, but that's because I'm still trying to get used to being on a bike and telling a story. That's a little complicated, So, but I think I can improve my speed over time. And I did some just preliminary math. And if I'm on a bike for an hour, for a day, then in theory, I should be able to write, I think it's around 3,000 words per day. So that ends up being about 21,000 words per week. So that means that in theory, just in theory, because I don't know how long it's really going to take, because fiction's going to take me a little bit longer, and I'm writing into the dark, and I'm going to be looping, and I'll probably loop at my computer, but I'll be looping, and it's going to take me a little bit to figure that out. But in theory, it would take me 2 weeks to write a 50,000 word book. All right, maybe more, maybe less, I don't know. And so then in theory, it would take me a month to write 2 novels. So book 1 and 2 would be in 1 month. And then in theory, I would have 4 books in 2 months, essentially. All right. Now, granted, these have to be good stories, right? You can't just crank out stories and publish them and expect them to sell. I've still got to do all the things that I continue to do with my fiction, and so this will be an interesting challenge. I'm really looking forward to this. And another wrinkle in this is that I start law school in approximately 1 month. So can I get at least the first book done by the time classes start? And can I even get the second book done and maybe start on the third by the time classes start? I don't know. We'll see what my reward is. But if I get the first book done, that's cool. If I can get the second book done, that's even better. If I can make progress on the third one, that would be even better. But like I said, this is unknown territory. I have no idea where this is going to go. And the dictation time is in addition to all the other writing that I'm doing. So yeah, I'm going to be on the bike a little bit longer than I've been in the past. I think usually I'm on the bike for about 30 minutes at a time. So now I'm going to be on the bike for a total of an hour. So that's 30 extra minutes per day. But I'm still going to be doing other things for my writing. So it's not like the writing is going to fall off the radar. I'm still going to be writing on my computer. I'm just going to be writing a different project. I'm still going to be marketing and doing the stuff I'm doing for Amnesia Mode. It's just going to be a different project. It's just that I'm going to be spending more time writing fiction. So yeah, we'll see what happens. If I fall off the bike and crack my head open or fail at this, and it's all good. You guys will get some entertainment out of it. And I'm working out some ways to bring you guys along in the back seat, or at least on the behind the scenes. Some folks have asked about that. People would like to hear what the dictation sounds like or see what it looks like. And so I'm figuring out what that's going to look like as well. So there will be some sort of backseat access, so to speak, for those who are interested, because I know a lot of you are interested in process and what it would look like to be able to dictate clean. So that's coming too. So anyway, that's all I got for this week. Hope everybody's doing great, and I will plan on talking to you next week. Plan on hearing an Amnesia Mode wrap-up next week, and then we'll, once I'm finished with research for this novel, I will jump into the challenge right away. So with that, thanks for listening, and peace. Thanks for joining me this week. If you enjoyed this episode, you'll enjoy my backlist episodes at michaelaran.com/podcast. For your free starter library of my favorite novels, join my fan club by visiting michaelaran.com/fanclub. If you're a writer and want to connect with me further, check out my YouTube channel, Author Level Up, for helpful writing advice at authorlevelup.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll be back next week.